So we talk a lot about reading activities on my channel and in my blog posts, on my Instagram, pretty much all over. I'm always talking about reading activities. I even presented at a conference this fall with 10 activities you can do with any reading. But this comment from Rachel made me realize it's been a long time since I've talked to you about where I find the readings that I do the activities with. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to find readings to use with your students in your Spanish classroom. Let's get right into it. So first off, I want to mention that there's lots and lots and lots of paid reading resources out there. I'm going to try and focus on free reading resources, and I've done posts where I talk about, my favorite books for novices, and my favorite books for teaching a unit on Puerto Rico, and my favorite books for teaching a unit on Spain, my favorite books for teaching a unit on Colombia, right? I have different posts about those kinds of books. What I want to focus on in this video is talking to you about different resources you can use with your classes for reading activities that are not another expense or not something that you'll have to pay for out of pocket, because I know sometimes you go to your admin, you ask, and the answer is no. So that's not what we're about today. So the first resource that I'm going to recommend to you has been around for a long time, and it's truly a work of love and service. It is Revista Literal, and if you're not familiar with it, basically what it is this collection of stories that are submitted and then proofread and then all housed on revistaliteral.com. It's an online resource for beginning Spanish language learners, all hosted by the Comprehensible Classroom, Martina Bex, if you're not familiar with her. Open, download, print, and you will have so many options to get you started. You almost don't even need the rest of the video, but I'm going to share the other resources with you anyways. Next is a CI nonfiction library. So the first was fiction. The second one is a nonfiction library. It's really similar though. It is resources for learners, but they're all nonfiction topics. The next one I have to share with you is a blog post, and it's titled 46 Pages You Can Print and Add to Your FVR Library for Free. So if that doesn't tell you something, it should. It's news articles from around the world that you can print and add. And while they're from several years ago, that doesn't mean that they're not still good input and interesting to talk about with your students. The fourth option I want to make sure to recommend to you is Teachers Pay Teachers. And I know I said I was recommending free resources, and you're like, Ashley, it's literally in the name, TPT, Teachers Pay Teachers. What are you doing? TPT has a free filter. So what I would recommend you go do is search Spanish short story and just use that free filter to kind of filter out all the other stuff that's going on. I have a free story that's linked on my TPT. I will make sure to put in the description of this video for you to go download and grab to add to your library. Okay, the fifth option that I have for you for free reading resources is probably my favorite one, and it is ones that you generate in your own classroom. So when you do classroom stories with your students, you are developing stories that you can then turn into readings that you can use with your classes, whether in your FVR library or just to turn into reading resources for them or classes in the future. So here's how I do that with classroom stories. When we do a story day or a couple of days where we're either storytelling or story asking, when we're all done, I sit down on my computer and I quickly type it up. Maybe I add some details or remove some things, or I just pick which version is the funniest. Like if I did a story with 3 or 4 class periods, I might only do one version of that story. Or if some of them were really funny, I'll do all of the versions of the story and just title them different things and print them separately. But once we're done with the story, I type them up, I add in some clip art from the internet, boom, bam, reading. And because we did it as a story, if a student picks up one of them and they just happen to be reading from a different class period, they're going to get repetitions of that structure and the vocabulary with a few different details or main characters thrown in there, but they'll still be able to follow along because the bones of the story are there. For a bonus, if you have coworkers who are doing the same things as you, right? Maybe you have a coworker who is also doing a classroom story. Have them do this too. Share the document between you, and all of a sudden you have double the readings you can use to rely on. Mike Pito has a blog post where he talks about this. He does this of a comic story creation thing where after his students have done a story, he gives them all blank comic forms and they draw and illustrate the story, and then he turns that into classroom library material. You could definitely do the same thing, right? But there's no reason why the material you use in your classroom verbally can't turn into a reading activity for your students in the future. So there's a bunch of free reading resources you can use for your students. Like I said, it's basically just open, print, add to your classroom library, or open, print, and then use it as the base of your unit. Whether that's going to be something where you read right away, or maybe you do some pre-reading activities, use the story, and then do a bunch of post-reading activities. However you want to set up your unit, any of the readings from these resources that I've shared could be a really great start to any of the reading activities that I have in my reading activities playlist. The other thing that I wanted to mention, because I know sometimes we use stories like this as kind of the vehicle to get our students to work with a particular grammar structure or to work with a particular set of vocabulary that we have to cover or anything like that. And sometimes when you're doing that sort of thing, it can be really overwhelming to look at this huge database of resources and say, how am I ever going to find the reading that's going to fit what I need to cover for my students? So if that's your situation, I just wanted to share one more thing with you. I have a set of readings on TPT where I've created a bunch of different stories that go with different topics or themes, because that was my situation, right? I had to cover certain topics, certain structures, certain grammar focuses. And so what I would do is I would sit down with those and then I'd write a story, and then we'd do that story with the reading activities that we love to do. So that way I could make sure I was checking the boxes that I had to. So if that sounds like something that would be helpful for you, I will make sure to link to that in the description of this video. Right now you can grab a whole bunch of my stories in one bundle for an extra discount. So here's just some of the stories and the topics that are included in that bundle. La ciudad, vocab, story, and activities. They explore around the town, so you're going to get lots of prepositions of location, estar, and then of course city vocabulary. Comida, story and activities. Gustar and pasatiempos. A telling time and school supplies. Spanish tener expressions and weather. School supplies and classes. Tener que and los quehaceres. Or if you needed to do tener que with school, I have a different story that focuses on tener que and school situations. So anyways, I just wanted to make sure you knew that that was an option, especially if you have any specific structures that you are really wanting to focus on, but feel really overwhelmed at the thought of like digging through this big database of all the options. I do have that set of stories there available for you to just download and use right away with your student. So now you have a whole bunch of readings, but you're going, what am I gonna do with them? I highly recommend checking out this playlist right here. It is a whole bunch of reading activities that you can do with any reading. So any of the readings that I mentioned in this video, you can download, print, and use with your students. And then these are the activities that you can use with the readings. So as you're trying to lesson plan, this kind of covers everything that you need. Thanks so much for watching. If this video was helpful for you, please remember to give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows you like it. Click subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content in the future. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.